turn this stuff off for a sec, and
I got a train coming.
I'll just do this for a sec.
Did you? Okay, I'm sorry, Joni. So you didn't want to do the intro? You wanted me to do it? Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our latest professional talk at the Albany IGDA Discord channel, given by Jeremy Rhoades. Let me just make sure I don't mess up the title of the talk. Where is it? Oh my goodness. It's how a small game developer can still think big, is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. So, Jeremy Rhoades, take it away.
Alrighty, sounds good. We'll just jump right to it then. All right, so I don't present on Discord often. Is it presenting correctly? Okay.
Yes.
You'll see it. You haven't started presenting the actual thing.
Oh yes, that would help.
Yep, there you go.
My apologies. All right.
Yeah, now it looks good.
Okay. All right, so here goes the presentation, how a small game developer can still think big. So this is just a presentation about, I just figured I'd share what I could with the knowledge that I have. So I went to, background on myself, I went to school for computer information systems, currently work as a database developer. And actually that's on the next slide here. Sorry. So I am first and foremost a husband and father. I also am the founder of Nonage LLC, creator of PowerBots Retro, and more games coming soon, hopefully. And yes, by day I am a database developer and information security technology specialist. I'm also a website developer and Discord/Twitch/Twitter bot enthusiast. I've been interested in game development since 2002, and former treasurer of Home Sweet Home right here, IGDA Albany. So it's good to be back for a bit. Yeah. So, okay. So that's. Sorry, I didn't have the mouse on there. All right, so jumping right to it. So I guess in my education experience and work experience, just since I've been so interested in game development, then I've going through that and having game development on the brain kind of draws a lot of similarities, and you can really see where things can be useful and applied within game development. And it's not much different. So this slide's title is Indie Games versus Software Applications, which technically a game is a software application. But I guess in this comparison, I'm more thinking so like business tools like I don't know, Microsoft Office products as a broad example, or Google Slides even, which I'm using currently. So yeah, just a comparison between the two, and I guess showing different processes of the system and analysis design approach that were useful in development. So similarities, end users is what the technical term would be for in I guess the typical IT worlds. So that would be like our, the gamers or the players. I wrote down some different diagrams that are useful for each. So that one does have a system sequence diagram that you can kind of show different relationships between between the user and the program, and which actions are being taken, and what the inputs and outputs are. UI/user interface. Every program has, well, not every program, but most programs that a user will encounter has a UI, and I do have the definition here just to remind myself that I guess taking a step back and thinking like logically about what an interface actually is something that I found very helpful, just as far as it's usually you jump to like the screens and the menu items and that sort of thing, but the controller actually technically is an interface by like IT standards if you're talking about like like just the inputs and outputs. So anytime that you come across in a in like a IT diagram, when you see the word interface, that could mean a few different things. So data manipulation will show entity relationship diagrams, which actually I meant to put an example on this slide, but I can bring it up after this slide if that helps. But that's actually something that helps me a lot, especially with my main job being a database developer, and bringing that sort of database development into the projects that I work on. For those who don't know, PowerBots Retro, the game that's released, is online multiplayer. It does have like a user account system. So that kind of information does help a lot when you're working with user accounts if you get to that level. So the entity relationship diagram basically just shows the relationship between between entities. I guess it can be self-explanatory that way. But it's kind of like the different objects and the different attributes of the objects. So if you have like a user would be, you'd have like an object of the user, and that would have different attributes such as the username, password, etc. And that diagram translates directly into code. Excuse me. That can be implemented into a database. So it just helps to, especially if you're not able to be at the computer 24/7, and if you're, or I mean, 24/7 obviously would be excessive, but if you're not able to get much time working on your project, then it helps to have these different diagrams and such to plan ahead a little bit, so that when you come to it, then it's, you already know what you're doing before you do it, kind of thing. So functions, reacting to user inputs, that's where flowcharts come in handy. It helps with, I have on the screen just a small snippet of the website flowchart of, it's, hopefully it's easy to read. I mean, flowcharts I feel like are pretty common, so it's not too out of the ordinary, but you do have them, or you can use it in Google, I forget the name now. But Google has all these free tools basically that you can use, and see, I feel like I have it open even, so I wonder if I can just nope, there's Christmas lyrics. It's in a new tab, but I'll come back to it at the end. So websites. So as I mentioned, I've been a web developer, freelance web developer at some points. I did find that very useful. It's useful for businesses and for game developers, since game development can be a business. but just a quick touch on that is basically there's they have all these free tools like Squarespace and or not free but cheap like website builders. Some of them are free. They have WordPress, which WordPress is pretty good, and I can't think of the other one. Squarespace and Wix is the other one yet, which they're definitely good starting points. And having a website is a lot better than not having a website at all. So if if when people use those tools, I think that's good. I also think that it's good to dive a little deeper into it, and definitely would encourage that because a lot can come from it. It can get down to if you use like Google's PageSpeed Insights tools and different tools like that. Then the deeper you get into it, the more you can work with search engines and make your website more visible, and in turn get more traffic and whatnot. So just a couple of differences that I wanted to note between games and like the day-to-day work that I do. It's mainly like it's kind of like a difference and a similarity at the same time, but like game engines versus frameworks. So I feel like, to me, I view the game engines as the frameworks because I don't know. I mean, some of them are kind of counted as frameworks, actually. If you count like what is it, libgdx, I think, as more of a framework. But I guess game engines I would view as more of the visual tool, and what they handle for you is the following quick points of rendering, game tick, and animations. But if you're not using an engine, which for my first game I did not use an engine, and then those were kind of the three categories that I really had to dive into to learn more about, and just really it was very different compared to what I was used to. So just something to note. All right, so as an intro on the differences between the products, but now I wanted to talk about the differences of the teams. So we have, I guess the small teams versus large teams, and many of you, I think, have worked on both, so I'm sure you have your own take on this. But I always say it's important to know your strengths and weaknesses so that you can identify them and work on them. So as far as weaknesses for the small team, I'd say testing/regression testing is the most important difference that I think, especially working on a product that is multiplayer, then it's something that is a bit different, I guess, when you're working on a team versus working on your own or on a small team. I think that the most important way to handle this, the biggest improvement that you can make when testing is to document things, and this refers to anything from code comments to like good documents and Git commits and that sort of thing. And then the other important piece is unit test documents, which at my day job I have spent an extensive amount of time creating unit test documents. And it's basically just, over and over and over, just identifying different test cases, making sure that you have every single thing the program is doing documented as something to test, and regression testing, in case that's not a familiar term, is the process of testing something that is already in place. So, for example, I just have this short video on here so let's say if we're putting in this inventory system here, then you would want to make sure that when you go to test the inventory system, obviously you're going to test this new feature that you're putting in. You're going to make sure that the inventory works, make sure that it shows the correct amount of numbers, correct icons, and everything. But you also have to test everything else that has already been tested to make sure that the previous functionality is working as well. I think that that's a big missing piece in, honestly, a lot of even bigger teams. But that's, as far as like just from my experience in working in IT, then I feel like that's usually what can make the difference between a solid product and a kind of messy, all over the place product, is just that, that documentation and regression testing, making sure that you are keeping a list of all these different things to test against. Because, and even working on this game, actually, then excuse me, then I can tell you that I've ran into different things where it's like, okay, I got this new feature in, but then that broke this other feature that's like as somehow seemingly unrelated, and then you trace it back and it's like, okay, I guess it is related, and I should have tested that alongside these new changes. So it's just good to document things and keep track of what needs to be tested. So next up on the list of weaknesses is environment control, which that kind of comes with time and just, I guess, patience, and whenever you have the funds to get new environment settings. But especially if you're working on like a console like Steam Kits or Steam Deck or Switch, and you need to get your hands on a dev kit or something like that. The Steam Deck actually is all like sold out right now. Which I'm trying to develop this for the Steam Deck and make it, which it should work right now. Should, that's the the keyword. But the way to work around that is to just get as similar of an environment as you can. Like Steam Deck recently came out with this list of requirements that a PC should have that would be similar to the Steam Deck, and so you can kind of mock it up as close as you can. But more on environment control in a little bit. Expenses. So I guess that's kind of an obvious big one that that small studios will struggle with. But the ways that you can get around it, I guess, would be either running your own servers or renting from smaller companies. Like there's one that was recommended to me called Ramnode, and I think the cheapest servers are like maybe like $5 a month or something. So it's comparing that to like like Amazon or like Unity. As much as I love Unity as a company, it's a big price difference. And then I think I'm looking more into Steam servers too, actually, because they may work with developers. That's something I'm looking into. Royalties and application licenses. So you can look for open source and free to use programs. Like GIMP and instead of Photoshop and that sort of thing. Let's see. Scalability kind of goes with expenses. Let's see. It's another obvious one, I guess. Okay, so small team strengths. So iterative releases is an important topic that I wanted to mention. So we have the indie example, of Among Us versus No Man's Sky. And I think, a lot of people hearing No Man's Sky can understand how the launch went. And same with Cyberpunk 2077 launch versus Fortnite launch is the AAA example. So, you look at those two, or I guess four different games, but two different scenarios, and there's a big, big difference in the way that their launches went. Most people know that it happens, but I'm not sure how many people understand the details behind it, which is something that I look into a lot because of something called agile development, which we'll get into in a minute if you haven't heard of it, or if you have. But yeah, so basically, I would favor like the Among Us or Fortnite approach, where you start working on your game and you just keep working on it and just kind of keep your head down and work on it and add features, fix bugs. Not really worry too much about whether or not it's taking off, as long as you have a good, solid product. Versus the No Man's Sky or Cyberpunk 2077 approach, where they are working on the game. See, we're just getting some water. So, they definitely are putting the work in, but they're also kind of advertising it as this big thing as the game is being developed, which, to be fair, now they're both, I think, as far as I know, still fairly successful game companies. So it's not that it doesn't work. It's just a matter of preference. I think that the first, the Among Us / Fortnite approach is much better for indie developers and small teams, as opposed to the No Man's Sky / Cyberpunk 2077 approach for a small team, because it's just you can only do so much marketing with a small team, I guess. And you can keep learning as you go too. Like, just because you're taking that one approach doesn't mean you can't still market it. So it's all there's always a balance, I guess. Other small team strengths is, you can make moves a bit quicker because you don't have to have all these meetings and different levels of approval just to make small changes, which can be looked at as a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your point of view and how the changes go. So I would say, as long as they're small changes, then quick moves are good. As far as and then there's creative control / direction. So it's keeping your team small can always allow for more passion in the work, I suppose. Oh, there goes the video again. Okay. So yeah, for those who are unfamiliar, agile methodology is again, that iterative release, Among Us versus No Man's Sky type of thing. So there's the waterfall approach, which is more the old way of doing things, and there's the agile approach, which I think most modern companies tend to lean towards. I think that it's also just a part of an improvement in technology. So, before the internet and game launchers were big, then waterfall was kind of the only available approach, where you have like the cartridges, and once you build that and release it, then that's about all you can do. I mean, you can release different versions of the cartridge and take somewhat of an agile approach that way, but it's more or less, it was kind of stuck in waterfall back then. Versus agile, you can, people are releasing games in early access and whatnot, so you can just kind of and even before that, you can do demos and stuff. And just because you release it doesn't mean it's going to be in that state forever. And I mean, even uh, even when it is done, it's not really done because you can keep updating it. So, that's why we see these games like being constantly re-released with new content and all that. So yeah, the ideas of agile is to get the product to the user ASAP. So as quick as you can, you just build the smallest viable product and get it out there, and you can just keep expanding on it until more people are interested in it. And it's the idea is to value action and improving things over the planning stages and making sure you get everything just right. And I put in this last one to start where you are, which is one of the ITIL methodology statements or guiding principles or something. There's it's basically another set of guiding principles and rules that can apply to any company. That's not even limited to IT, but if you have some free time and are looking for this type of information, then I would definitely suggest looking into ITIL 4 Foundation knowledge. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube over it. You can get like an actual ITIL 4 certification that could look good on your resume. There's definitely a lot of good knowledge in there just for how to, I guess, like self-manage. And I skipped over it, but I did want to mention that a product is unfinished until it's unsupported, which is something that I always say to myself because it kind of makes me feel better about just releasing something because there can be a lot of anxiety when you're releasing a game like, oh, but I want to add this, I wanted to do this, wanted to do this. But if it's out there, that doesn't mean that that's how it's going to stay. You can just keep improving on it and making it better until you want to put it down. All right. So these are just a couple of quick tips. And some of them are taken from like system analysis and design type of ideas, and some of them are just some things that I found really interesting and helpful. So yeah, just self-management when you're working on by yourself or in small teams is definitely, I think, more important than when you're working as a team and have someone to tell you what to do and keep nagging you. So the first thing is that it can look different for everybody. There's, I guess, two different approaches as far as being consistent, saying like, I'm going to work on this every day from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then you actually do that from 8 p.m. till 9 p.m. exactly. And then that's what you do. And you're making slowly but surely progress. Slow and sure progress, excuse me, towards your end goal. The other, I guess, approach is just being inspired and just doing what you're inspired to do and staying up till 4 a.m., 5 a.m., just working on your project, which, definitely know your limits if you're going to kind of do that approach. But I also think that there's a good balance between the two. I think that a little bit of both is needed at times. Obviously, if you need rest, I feel like your body will just naturally tell you which way to go. Finding inspiration. So I can't remember where I heard this, but I think it was probably just I don't know, some social media posts, but basically, it's just something that I found helpful if you find yourself doom scrolling your phone a lot, which I have in the past, and sometimes in the present even. But if you find yourself doing that a lot, then I feel like it's a good time to maybe change what accounts you follow and make it something that makes you want to take action, like maybe uh, something that has good quotes or like inspirational quotes or some artwork that inspires you or something like that. Execute immediately when possible. So this is kind of a mix between different methodologies, but it's kind of like this. I guess so. I used to think like if I thought of an idea, then I would have to do it right then and there, or else it wouldn't get done, kind of thing. Which I mean, sometimes there's the time and space to do that, but it's important to be flexible on when you can do that and when you can't do that. And so a helpful thing is to just, if you think of something and you want to do that, then just put it on the schedule as soon as you think of wanting to do that. And then that way, you're not putting it off completely, but it's still kind of there. Now the second point, there's something called a work breakdown sheet that is commonly used in like IT, I guess usually in the management sort of area. But there's kind of a simplified version that uh, I didn't necessarily come up with it, but I have found it from different people, and I think it works well for me, and maybe it could for you too. So basically, the idea is to write down 3 things per day. Whenever you're done with one, then you cross it out, and that can, if it's a physical pen and paper, that actually does a lot more. Like it's a lot more effort in your brain, and there's some kind of psychology behind it where it helps you feel better about it or dedicate more time to it. Um, so yeah, when you cross it out when you're done, then it's it gives like a better feeling of accomplishment. If you're not done with something, like if it comes to the end of the day and you didn't finish the whole list, then it's something you can break down into smaller parts. So if your goal was to like add a new boss to a level or something like that, then that's a pretty big goal if you think about it. So you can break it down into smaller parts of like maybe just like add one sprite sheet to the enemy sprite, or one sprite to the enemy sprite sheet, or uh, even just like creating the class file that would store that information, adding a variable or two, something like that. If you break it down into smaller parts, you're still making progress and not overwhelming yourself with too much too much information. And speaking of which, don't be afraid to put things down. So that's something that I think is also very important, because if you have too much on your plate, then it can be tempting to want to make the biggest, best game with all the features and every single thing that comes into it. But if you take things one at a time, then it can often help you freeze up less and get more done, as opposed to freezing up and not getting more done. So yeah, I guess less is more in that sense. And yeah, just another simple thing is to stay organized by keeping a calendar, again, because maybe that's just been one of my personal bigger weaknesses, but it does help a lot to keep a calendar for me, and it's something that is good to have like scheduling out everything. It's simple, but very changing. Beware of feature creeps. So that's a big. It's a common thing in indie games where you get the idea guy who wants to put everything into one box, but you gotta. I guess it's similar to the above points, but just put it back, or don't carry everything at once. Put it down if you need to, and it'll come back if it's important and if it needs to be there. Cleaning your workspace is something that it's if you have a clean space around you, it can help you think a lot better. There's I think also some psychology behind that as well, but it's excuse me. Yeah, it can make a big difference though, or even just like reorganizing. Like I think for like a good like 2 or 3 months at least, then I have this L-shaped desk, and it was kind of shaped like almost like making itself into a cubicle. Like it was against the wall, and then there was the L that came out, and the L that went to the other side, so that there was like wall, desk, desk. And then one day I just rotated it so that the long side of the desk was against the wall, and it feels so much more open, and for whatever reason helps me think a lot clearer. Last one is just to use a repository, as many people have learned the hard way. I mean, I guess that could also go along with just backing up your work, because I know you're not technically supposed to use a repository as a backup, but I mean, it works as one. I won't officially recommend it, but yeah, you just backing up your work using a repository is definitely something that can help avoid losing months of work. And then again, learning the hard way does help you remember a lot more. So I guess it could go either way. If as long as at some point, then backups happen. Okay. So the next slide. That's right. All right. So this was shown to me as a suggestion for is what the IGDA community would be interested in from a release. And while I'm not really, some of these don't technically apply, but I have heard some good advice for those items. So, for example, we did not get a publisher, but I've heard some good advice about getting a publisher, so I'll just share whatever I know and have found useful. All right, so the ones that apply to me less, or to Nonage less, I should say. Community management is kind of, I guess that's something that's a bit difficult for small teams because it takes a lot of work. But I think just the bottom lines is just to listen to your community and prioritize their comfort levels. Make sure everybody is feeling comfortable and safe to be there. And I will say the one thing I did learn was be patient when adding or implementing new rules, as long as they're not high priority, important things. So, like, for example, there was somebody wanting to share like a Discord link in the server, I think, and I was like on the fence about it, so I asked my sort of advisory board, or like the team that I work with, for Nonage, and we're all volunteers, so sometimes it takes a bit to hear back. So I waited like a day, and then figured that nobody was going to respond. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just, it seems like kind of spammy, so I'll just say not right now. And then a couple of days go by, and then I see that the team did get back, and after a couple days, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, why not? We'll let people. It's a small group. We'll just let people share their Discord servers if they want to." So I feel like I kind of jumped the gun on that one, and maybe it could be good to be patient sometimes. So I ended up switching the rules back to what the groups, what the what our team said. So it just kind of made it a little awkward, though. Publishing. So I think that releasing a game without a publisher was a good experience. I was able to learn a lot of different key pieces to releasing a game. I think that my personal take is going to be just to keep releasing games until either I feel more comfortable or until the right publisher comes to us. But I'm not going to rush it. Basically, long story short, and we'll just kind of see what happens there. See, oh yeah, making sure that the publisher is a good match is something that I've heard. So like, if you're making like the next, I don't know, Doom or something, then you probably wouldn't want to go with like Whitethorn Games or Chucklefish, who are aimed at more like cutesy style games. So I guess that's sort of kind of that idea. Just making sure that you don't just jump at the first opportunity just because it's a good publisher. It's also good to make sure that that they're a good fit. I did learn some important lessons in marketing. It's just something that I've personally studied somewhat in depth. I think that the key takeaway that I got was to give more than you take, and also find specific groups and give them something that they're already looking for. So, example, I guess, is that actually, I will come back to this in a couple of slides because there is a slide about this later. Porting to a console. I'll just mention it's basically just checking a bunch of boxes from everything that I've heard. I mean, I've obviously ported to Steam, and that's one thing. You just want to. There's a checklist, and you just have to keep going through it and go into their documentation and do some research and all that sort of thing. I think that it's interesting because it's like it's not really transferable knowledge most of the time. It's like you have to get it working for this very specific thing. So it's kind of like you're learning a lot of new information every time that you do something. So I think with that in mind, then it's important to just be okay with taking a break and coming back to it the next day with a fresh mind. Okay, how launch went. So now the things that do apply, and then I think after these 2 or 3, then that'll wrap it up. So yeah, we didn't have a big launch. We only sold, I think, 7 units. But I'm actually viewing this as a good thing because, as mentioned earlier, I like to take that more like Among Us or Fortnite approach where we're kind of just like testing things and are just sort of like putting stuff out. I'm kind of viewing it as like we're getting more like beta testing time and that sort of thing, and also along the way building up content for advertising and that sort of thing. So it wasn't a very advertised thing either. So, but the good thing about it is that I think that I was able to get a lot of market research done just simply by trying things and seeing how it works out. And that was the thing that I was going to come back to was I just wrote meme success. I'm realizing how odd that sounds as a bullet point. But as far as the market research, then I did find that Reddit is a very good place to advertise indie games. I think that's a good spot to find different marketing categories and meme marketing categories and that sort of thing. And I'll explain that in this graph here. So you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor on here, but this big spike here and this spike here. Yeah, these two big spikes here. And these were the daily wish lists leading up to the early access launch. Which is another thing to note is that this game isn't officially released. It's in like an early access state. But the two spikes here were from a what was it? The system requirements for PowerBots Retro. I think I put something odd in that was like if you can run paint, then you should be able to run this game or something like that. And one of my friends mentioned it to me and was like, nice, that's funny. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just kind of like, I'll see where that goes. I got some feedback on it that it's like, okay, that's something that some people can relate to. So I put that out and basically I put it out and it hit like a bunch of different categories that kind of resonated with people and that people were able to relate with. And it's really interesting categories. So like if there's like a Reddit group for if there's a red circle on an image that doesn't need to be there because people already know what you're talking about. And I did happen to put a red circle on that image, so people like tagged it to that group. So it's like different kind of categories like that. That it's like, if you find something that people are already like, I guess there's this large group of people that, for whatever reason, really get a kick out of that. Then you see something come up, and then it was kind of an accident. I left like on the bottom of the image, it had Nonage LLC. So then when I went to the Google Analytics, then I realized that actually a lot of people, after seeing that meme, wanted to know what game it was. Googled Nonage LLC, and naturally, like had sort of a natural path to find the game and added it to their wish list. So just like some interesting stuff like that. Where you can just continue to polish the. It's kind of like just almost taking an agile approach to marketing, I guess, as well, not just the game itself. The last 2 points are just some positive points of having a slower launch. We can fix the glitches and. We have some control over the funnel, which what I mean by that is I'm kind of limiting the amount of people who purchase it by by being this like $10 indie game that's unheard of. But then when we go on sale, then we'll get a couple more sales and be able to test with a few more users and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like it's almost like an intentional way to have like a slow release that hopefully will kind of stabilize it a bit more. Let's see. Okay. I might be going on a little bit long, I'm realizing. I think there's just 2 more slides. So yeah, just work since release. We added some mouse and controller supports, changes to the HUD, and menu changes, and just some minor fixes and that sort of thing. Glitches and whatnot. Future game content plans, short term, additional bug fixes, Steam Deck, Linux and Mac support, because it's a Java game, so I should be able to just it should be good to go on those systems already, honestly. We've got a couple more levels coming soon and additional characters. I think there's 7 levels total that are already mostly developed that just kind of need finishing touches. Long term, these are kind of just ideas at this point. But yeah, so we have like a PvP functionality that's in the game, and it's just kind of like in progress. I'm not sure if I'll do a battle royale with it or something else that's slightly different. There's a content uploader where people can upload their own like NPC text and that sort of thing. Similar to like a metaverse type thing, which I'm only now realizing now that the term metaverse is coming out. But yeah, I think that people will be able to upload their own skins, and I'm aiming for it to feel more like a social media type of thing, and that does already work and is in place. It's just something that needs to be fine tuned and might not come out for a while. I do want to get to mobile and console ports. I'm not sure when that will be though, and then obviously more games. And I think that could be a good spot to end it. Because I'm realizing I went a little bit too long.
Thank you. Do we have questions? I have questions, but does anyone else have questions?
One question I had was like, how much time did you find you were spending between like, game development and managing the community, and just like, how did you kind of figure out like what would be the best use of your time a little bit, I suppose.
Let's see. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that let me see. Well, I'm just gonna turn it down a little bit. Is there like a lot of background noise, by the way, or I'm
I
just
haven't really
noticing
heard
my
anything.
kids are running around the house. Oh, okay. But yeah, so I guess it just kind of feels, or it kind of depends on where I feel a pull at the moment. I can't remember who said this, but I think it was some author mentioned that, especially when you have like a family and and especially with kids, it kind of becomes a sort of juggling act at some point where you just have to kind of really focus and um, just kind of look in different directions to see what needs to be or what needs the most attention, and what needs the most work. And what's if you find something that's close to falling, then obviously you're gonna go grab the ball that you're juggling. So yes, I guess it just depends on uh, what's calling you the most, if that makes sense. I know that's kind of an odd answer, but sure.
I have a couple of questions, so I'll start with one of them. It kind of plays off of Joni's question, I guess, of how do you balance having a full-time job, having a family, having children, having a relationship? I assume you and your wife spend time together and do that sort of thing, maintaining a house or just a home in general, and still finding time to do all this. How do you balance all of that in a way that is hopefully healthy?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like it took a while to get to a point where I feel like it's healthy. Um, I think that that's one of the reasons that I'm so adamant on like keeping a calendar and scheduling things. So if you always have something on the calendar of each spot that needs attention and that needs focus, then that's something that I think is important to it's because that way it's not just because there's a balance of being in the moment and what you're doing right now, making sure you're focusing on it, doing the best that you can in it. Also, especially if it's projects, being willing to put that down and turn to what else needs attention, if it does. And just a lot of communication, definitely. Communication is uh important in relationships, and whether it's a spouse or children, or even with yourself and your projects and that sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of as far as the calendars, it's kind of like a communication almost to myself that, okay, I'm going to do this in the future, so I don't have to worry about it now. And it can also be helpful to. I notice my daughter picks up on it a lot. If we have like, okay, we're gonna have a daddy daughter date on Tuesday or something like that, and then she'll have something to look forward to, and um, knows that I still, um, even if she sees me working, she knows that I still prioritize her and have plans to give her attention, and when the time comes that I do give her attention, and that's when the focus and being in the moment comes in.
Thank you. I actually do have a follow-up to that, which is, what do you do when you have your plans, but then something goes wrong? You're sick, or one of your kids are sick, or you have to work late, or you just aren't feeling well. Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah. Let's see. So I think I had some notes in there that were relating to that. So I'll just pull that back up. Um,
Sorry if I missed that. I did have to step away for a brief moment at one
oh
point.
no. I mean, it's honestly, I feel like I was being vague with it intentionally so that people could um, find different applications as well. But yeah, I think see, I guess that's just where like it's important to also be flexible and just kind of accept what is and what happens. And um, again, I guess I keep going back to the calendar example, but it can also help to um, just like reschedule. If something comes up, then you can if you want to do it now, then sometimes doing it now just means putting it on the calendar, and that's the action that you take towards it. It doesn't always have to mean that you, um, stay up till 5 a.m. now. If there's a plan for it in the future, then um, I think that can, at least for me, I think that helps my mindset a lot.
Thank you. I have another question, but I want to wait until someone else gets to ask one.
I've got two possible follow-up. I came in a little bit late, so you may have covered this. One, why choose Steam? Right, you're delivering in Steam. Second thing is the game that you made the type of games you like to play, and if so, do you find yourself playing your game a lot now that you've made it?
All right. So let's see. It was why Steam and is my game like games that I play, right? Okay, so Steam. Let me see. I picked Steam because most of my choices, honestly, were just simply because they were some of the first choices that I heard of. So if Steam was the first, I think, PC launcher that I heard of. So I thought about making my own launcher, but some of the advantages that kept me with Steam was a there's visibility on Steam. So yeah, I mean, it's almost contradictory to say that because I think there's hundreds, maybe even thousands of games that are released on Steam every day. But there is still, they're categorized, and there is still natural visibility that comes with Steam. What am I saying? Like the updates. That's right. So there's a few different ways to get that visibility with Steam. You can update your game. It'll notify your users, and I think sometimes, let me see. No, the sales. That's right. If you put your game on sale, then if somebody wishlisted your game, then they'll get an email notification most of the time. So there's a lot of systems in place that that I think are useful um, for visibility and also just being trustworthy. It's a very known brand. It's also been around for a long time. And then I've thought about doing like mobile versus PC, and PC is the place that I think is best to start because, well, it's easier to get on, and it also has, I think, still to this day, the biggest gaming player base, even with all the awesome consoles and stuff that's out there. So the second question, so PowerBots Retro was in its early stages inspired by Maple Story, I believe would be the closest example. um, and then I think from there, I just wanted to see some more like team aspects to it. And there's a lot of interesting features that aren't really shown yet. So I think over time, I'm going to keep just detailing different features that are on there, like especially like the boss team battles, and there's a few like power ups that you can get that are interesting too, and like the team playability too, where basically like so with Maple Story, when you play it, then it's like if somebody is at level 100 and you're just joining today with them, then there's going to be a big difference unless they like create a brand new character. So with PowerBots Retro, I kind of made it so that players can kind of jump in at any point and still kind of catch up. It's got like a low level cap, I think of like 5. And then as far as items, you can either walk around and collect items, um, or you can use like team abilities to give other players the like the power ups sort of thing. So it's got some unique gameplays in it, but short answer, Maple Story was probably the biggest inspiration for that one.
If no one else has a question, I have another question.
I have a question, or
Oh,
possibly two.
yeah, go ahead.
Just want to say thanks for a great talk, first of all.
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
curious how you test the game, like especially the kind of multiplayer aspect. Like, is that something that you sort of do scheduled play testing with your Discord, or yeah, how do you kind of go about that?
Yeah, so we did have a few scheduled play testing days. We haven't since launch. I think that once I get the next level out, then I'm gonna try and schedule like an event. Because I think that yeah, people were pretty responsive to that. It's it's tough to test when it's when you don't have a team who's able to test all the time. But yeah, sometimes I play with my kids too, so that they help me test it. They like playing it. But yeah, those test days in the Discord server, and then there was a couple streamers that I've been talking to who kind of helped me play test a little bit. Um, as sort of like they almost act like the business users of an application, so they'll like give me a lot of feedback on um, different tips that they think would go well with streaming and that sort of thing. Yeah, I'd say those are the three uh, testing strategies. I guess would be Discord server, streamers, and my favorite would be playing with my children.
Thanks. Is it all right if I ask one more?
I'm good.
This one's a little more broad, but I'm just curious, maybe both for the project and for Nonage in general, like how do you define success? Like what is sort of like your end goal, not end goal, but sort of achievement that you're aiming for when you think about like where you're hoping to get to with the project and with the just yeah, in general with Nonage?
Yeah, I like that question. And I feel like it took me a long time uh to find my personal answer to that question. But I think that success for me is just um I guess sort of like acceptance of where I'm at now and just kind of like being in the moment and um just being like recognizing that uh that I'm able to keep working at things and keep moving forward and yeah, because I mean as long as you're working at it, then I'd say that any one of us, as long as we're uh working on some sort of project, then that's like part of who we are, like and like I might not make a living off of it. I might not be able to spend even like 8 hours a day as a job, but it's still a part of who I am. And it's like, if I'm making games, then I'm a game developer kind of thing, because even like the biggest like musicians and whatnot, they're not making music 24/7, so even they have to be uh, satisfied with some downtime sort of thing. These might be kind of vague references, but I hope that kind of answers a little bit.
Oh, that's a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a last question if no one else does, but I also understand it's getting a little bit late, so I understand if you're gotta get going.
Oh, it's time.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask about, are there any risks associated with taking an iterative approach? Like, do you ever sort of, program yourself into a hole where you're kind of like, okay, I'd like to add this feature, but because of the way I've previously set up all this other stuff, like how much planning in advance do you have to do? Do you ever find yourself like kind of going, now I'm trying to add something and it's difficult because of the way I had things set up before wasn't conducive to what I want to do now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that would be. So there's a term actually in programming called code refactoring, where you kind of take certain parts of the code, and the way I understand it, anyhow, is you make that part of the code more reusable. So, I think that's what's been the biggest help in that area, is to try and make like anything that I make, I try to just make it as reusable as possible. And then that way, maybe dynamic is a better word for it. So like reusable and dynamic. So if you're making, I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, so if I'm making like the main character of the game is Shockbot, so if I'm making the class that contains Shockbot, then I think towards the beginning I did start off where it was just like, okay, the class name is Shockbot, and some of the functions would be like, shoot the shock bullets, or use, like very specific to that character. But the more you branch out, then the more reusable it can be. So then, I guess it's part of object-oriented programming also, and I think they would call it inheritance, where you kind of branch out, and instead of creating that specific like Shockbot character, then you create something called a even just like a character class, and then that could be. There could be classes that inherit from that character class and that use some similar features, such as they have like a speech bubble, they have a sprite to draw, and different actions that they can do, and then you can use that same class for anything in the game that has those things. So it could be an enemy, an NPC, it could be for any playable character. It could be, so I guess the more you branch things out, then the easier it can be, if you keep in mind at the beginning that this could have many different uses. So I'll make it as kind of flexible as it could be.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Seems like we may be out of questions. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. That was a really great talk. Thank you.
Very much appreciated. I definitely appreciate the opportunity, and it's good to see you all again. It's been a while since I'm a little bit sad sometimes that I stepped down, but even though I do think it was the right choice.
Yeah, we miss you. We do, but I also totally understand. Life is very busy. There's a lot going on in the world.
That it is.
Excellent. Well, we can take this time if folks want. Are we still recording, Joni?